Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Birth Lounge. I am so excited for the conversation I'm about to have with the amazing Tessa Bobir over in Queensland. So it's a virtual couch here. So I'm really excited. I first met Tessa at a workshop actually, and just straight away I could really tell just this genuine, authentic person just with this hunger to learn, but also this wisdom to share. So I reached out to Tessa and said, and probably before I could even finish my sentence, she said yes to this. Do you want to have a conversation about all things birth? And so I'm very blessed to have an hour of your time. Tessa, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm super excited to be talking and super nervous.
That's okay, me too. Now, Tessa, I have no idea what we even talk about today. I think for me, most importantly, is I do recognize all the amazing stuff you put out there in the world of social media. And I think what I love about you is that you're so authentic in sharing without concern of other people's opinions and thoughts. It's like, if it's true for you, you're free to share it. And I want you to feel that on today's session as well. So I'm all ears. You know, help us understand when it comes to the world of birth. Maybe first share a little bit about you so people get to know who you are, what you do in the world of birth.
Okay, so I am a doula. I did my doula training in 2014. But because I was a single mum at the time, I wasn't able to be an on-call doula. So instead, I decided to train as a placenta encapsulation specialist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I did that for a couple of years, and I've just recently finished up with that just to focus on another area. And I'm also hoping to get back into the doula work as well. So currently I own and run Yoni Herbs Australia, which is how would you describe it? It's vaginal steaming for women to help them regulate their menstrual cycles, sort out fertility struggles. It's really important postpartum as well to help clear out all the lochia, prevent infections, aid healing, all that sort of stuff. So I mixed different herb blends, put them into, I don't know if you can see it back here, little
wow.
They're like a little tea bag, and yeah, so I provide that to women and guide them with what to do there. So yeah, and I'm also an optimal maternal positioning ambassador. So
wow.
Yes, just this week I've been able to put that into practice with a friend who's overdue with baby number 2. So that's very exciting. I'm hoping to do a lot more of that sort of stuff.
Very cool. Yeah. So Tessa, let's dive straight in. Here's what I'd love to know. What drew you to birth? I mean, you have children, but I'm always curious. Normally that's a journey that tends to lead people to the world of doulaing.
I think I've always been drawn to birth. I think my own pregnancy at 17 and my baby's birth and our experience there definitely pushed me more towards my love of birth. But I have heard previously that I was drawing pregnant women in hospital when I was in kindy as a child myself. So I feel like it's in me. There's definitely this passion to support women during such a sacred and wild transition of life. But yeah, I think my son, so I was 17 when I fell pregnant, and I didn't really have strong guides with like female health issues. And I was lucky enough to find out that there was a little feminist organization called Young Parents Program that was sort of recruiting pregnant teens and teaching them amazing things while giving them a free feed and teaching us about our rights and stuff. So yeah, it was just, I was so amazed at all of this wisdom. And it was also the first time I sat in circle and was surrounded by women, and it wasn't some bitchy competition. It was like, there's so much knowledge for you and it will change your life once you master it. And I think the passion just grew from there. I just wanted to know more and more and more about women's health and our rights and how to navigate the system and how to find those loopholes and get through them. So, amazing. Yeah.
And so Tessa, when you discovered you were pregnant, and you discovered this group as well. What else did you discover about yourself? Like, what did you learn about yourself through that time of life?
What did I learn? I think I learned how strong I am. I think falling pregnant at such a young age really gave me a voice. I feel like my son definitely saved me from a life that I was heading towards, which was going to be really crappy. But now that I had this child that I wanted to protect and raise the way I believed a child should be raised, I suddenly found my voice and became very confident in telling people, no, that's not how things are going to happen. You know, I'm the protector of this child. I'm the one that's been given the duty of protecting, raising, nurturing, growing, birthing this baby. So obviously I'm the one with the ultimate wisdom here. Yeah.
At 17.
Yeah.
That's
I've always been strong-willed.
Awesome. And that's what I love about you, Tess. I can tell straight away. And as I always share, you know, like with I share before your social media posts and things as well. I love the truth that you are willing to share. I think that's so important. And so if we look at birth specifically, then what have you discovered since? You know, I guess when it comes to how old is your son now? And I've gone blank for your son's name. Sorry.
Riley, and he's 9.
Riley's 9. Okay, so 9 years, right, since that's passed. Showing your age now, but that's okay. I'm showing I'm showing mine with my haircut, so it's all right. So when it comes to, you know, these past 9 years, what's evolved for you? You know, obviously at 17 to now, you know, it's not a different person, but you would have learned a lot through these experiences. What have you?
I think what I learned is that how powerful birth is. Like it gives you the potential to be reborn yourself.
Wow.
So yeah, it's, if you have the right support and the right guidance, and even sometimes when you don't, even out of a traumatic experience, you have to face it at some point. You have to debrief, you have to turn around and look back and look at what happened, what could have been done differently. How your decisions affected things and so on and so forth. And it really, it just definitely gives you the chance to be reborn. It definitely gives you the chance to go, okay, I'm leaving this person behind because they're gone. And I also think it's not talked about, but I think it needs to be, that you're allowed to mourn the person you were before that baby came into the world, because they're gone now. And like you said, that you're not a completely different person, but you're definitely a new version, like an evolved version. And does that make sense?
It completely. I loved what you just shared, and I would love to understand your definition of, when you say reborn, what does that mean? What does that look and feel like?
I feel like that means a part of you dies, like an old part that no longer serves you. I feel like we can't have birth without death. So
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Go further on that. I'm curious of it. You know, I just so you know, I just discovered the other day, I'm researching everything birth, and I discovered death doulas, which is something I didn't even realize. And so hearing this,
So
is like,
beautiful.
I'm putting all the pieces together through these conversations. So when you say a part of you dies, if we reflect on your journey, what died to be reborn? What happened? What unfolded?
I feel like it's the chance to start again. So you can, if you're ready to, accept all the terrible shit that you did in the past, all the things that you wish you had done different, all the times you were led astray because you had lost your inner power and your inner belief, and your intuition. And it's your chance to go, okay, I'm going to try again, but we're going to follow my inner guidance now. Does that make sense?
Oh.
So, yeah, how would you put it? I don't know. I'm lost for words now.
That's right. And you don't have to question any of it. It's amazing. I'm taking it all in.
Yeah. I feel like, so there's different transitions in life that are super important, and I really enjoy talking about them. And that's your own birth, so your own journey into this world affects you, and then you have another transition, or some people call it a rite of passage. Different cultures call it a rite of passage, and it's when you reach like this new threshold, and it's like, I need to let go of everything that's been before me. It's time to let it go. It can die, and it can. So the way I always describe it is like, let go of what no longer serves you. It's like throwing it into a fire, all the experiences before, or your thoughts and feelings, and the fire is going to burn it up, turn it into ash, and that ash is going to go into the sky. It's going to come down onto the earth, and it's going to nourish that new life. Hopefully that makes sense.
Wow.
So, you know, your journey into this world, at some point we can reflect on how that our own birth affects our creative expression, and how, I think you talked about it in the previous video with Ginny, how birth affects the baby, but yeah, we won't go there yet. But then again, so for instance, for a woman, the first time she bleeds, that's another transition. She's suddenly no longer a child, she's stepping into adolescence. So that's another chance to mourn what's been and put it and let it go, and integrate and accept everything that you've experienced so far. And you step forward again when you, some people class your first sexual experience. I think that's a pretty important one, because each transition, you can either be empowered or disempowered. So for example, with your first bleed, was it shameful? Was it taboo? Like, were you empowered? Were you celebrated? Hey, you're fertile now, your body is growing, it's maturing, you're at this new phase, you're going to come across different bridges and journeys. And then again, when you fall pregnant, it's another transition during the pregnancy and at the birth as well, because it's your chance to assert your authority over your body and trust your intuition and lay the law down. But yeah, and how you're treated is either gonna empower you or disempower you. So are you surrounded by supportive people, or are you surrounded by people that think you're not capable of this and who are going to put fear and doubt in your mind? And then that's going to affect your motherhood journey. Are you constantly going to refer to other people? Are you going to trust your instincts? Is that making sense? Are we following?
Completely. And I want to ask this, because I love what you're just sharing now. You know, imagine there's somebody listening to this, Tessa, and they're maybe coming from the place where what you're saying resonates, but maybe because of the disempowering element. So how does your voice become the strongest? You know, if your external world and the environment around you, especially if somebody is pregnant and it's not supportive, how does your voice, I mean, you have a strong voice, and I know that there's probably been challenges that have brought that out, but what do you suggest to them? How do they become the loudest voice in the room?
What do I suggest to be the loudest voice in the room?
Yeah.
I feel like it's quite, I just have this book title popping into my head, The Road Less Traveled. It's like, it can be quite lonely sometimes and quite hard to try and navigate that path, trying to assert yourself without being aggressive or passive aggressive or completely shutting down. Personally, I'm totally going to admit I shut down. Like, I'll just be like, that's too hard, basket. I'm just going to shut you out and keep going. But I'm well aware that that's not necessarily helping. Sometimes that's the only way to deal with certain situations. But I feel like if you're not, you've got to be willing to enter a level-headed conversation, and the other person has to be willing to receive it. And I feel like the way our society is raised, we don't really know how to assert ourselves or be confident in sharing our needs. That's another struggle that, like, people are always like, you're so confident and bubbly and you share so much. And I'm like, yeah, I'm also all the other things as well. Like, I'm also a nervous wreck, and like, you're just seeing one snippet where it's really good, but you don't know how long it took for me to get there, or I don't know. So
which is all part of being human, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Bit of everything. Whole spectrum.
One key word, Tessa, that keeps coming up that I hear and it really resonates with me is we talk about intuition. How important is that through pregnancy and birth?
Like, so important.
Tell me more.
I got to think of a word that encapsulates how important it is. It's number one, you know, and it can be make or break in your birthing experience completely. And I feel like that's why I feel like it's really hard to follow your intuition when you're in a clinical setting, because your intuition is something so I believe your intuition is the most powerful when you're bleeding as a woman. When you're bleeding, you're going inward, you're hibernating, you're wanting comfort, you're not wanting to be dealing with a lot of crap, outside world stuff. You've got less patience for bullshit. You see through the shit more. So I hope I can say that on here.
Whatever you want.
So yeah, I feel like so when you're bleeding, it's really similar to the season of winter. It's like an inward time to go within, time to reflect. I don't know if I have the words. So when you're in a clinical setting, when it's bright lights and noises and there's time frames and the clock is the thing that we're focusing on rather than the woman and her hormones and supporting her and keeping her in a safe container, in a safe space so that she can go on this inward journey to bring this baby earthside. I feel like that really puts a strain on the intuition. It almost silences it. Yeah. So
define intuition. I'd love, let's say I open a dictionary, right? And Tessa's written the definition of intuition. And let's talk women specifically. How do you define what is it?
An inner guidance, I guess, an inner voice, a higher self, maybe, where, yeah, I think for me, when I became more aware of my intuition, was realizing that my head's actually connected to my body and my body actually talks to me if I listen to her. So I would say like an inner voice who's like, she questions you, but she's not the nasty inner voice. She's like, ooh, are you sure? Like there are, maybe you need to take a moment to think and to really feel into things. Not so much think, feel into things. I think we do enough thinking, but we need to feel more. It's that, when you get like a good vibe or a bad vibe from a situation or a thing or a person or an idea, follow that, like really try and honor that. Like we have these instincts, this intuition for a reason, and it's to keep us safe. And on the right path, I guess.
Amazing. And there's a word that always comes up when you speak to I speak to midwives and I speak to doulas, medical, non-medical, wherever it comes from, the word safety in relation to birth and pregnancy for that matter as well. Something that always comes up. So how do you define safety? Maybe let's speak for you specifically. You talk about your birth, and I'm not sure of your experience in birth, but if you talk about your pregnancy, how
safety. My idea of safe, I think safety is individual. It's going to look different for everyone, and I think people's previous experiences are going to definitely define what safety is for everyone. For me, safety is just being able to be me, being able to follow those instincts. Being able to just be me, be seen, show up without being attacked or without someone trying to augment me or direct me or change me or hush me. Yeah. So for my birth with Riley, I had 3 days of pre-labor, and then I think it was the Monday, I went into the hospital for a full physio class because I had some sciatic pain. And I remember just having little niggly feelings, kind of like period pain. I'm laying on my back floating, and the physio is telling us what to do. And all of a sudden she comes up to me and she's like, "Are you having contractions?" And I was like, "Kinda." And she's like, "Do not have this baby in my pool." And anyway, I went home and tried to sleep it off because, you know, being a first-time mum, I was expecting quite a few hours, like it's for this to progress and to eventuate. And so I think I labored, and it was really, really intense, and I was really, really struggling. So my mother-in-law at the time was a birth center midwife. So she came over and she was like, "Do you want me to check you?" And I was like, "No way, I don't want you looking at me." So she's like, it's quite interesting because she is quite a confident, well, she is a confident, very experienced midwife. And she said later on, you know, the way you were laboring, it looks like you were much further along. And so she was like, "Let's go in." Whereas usually she'd be like, "Stay home as long as possible." So we went in, and when they checked me, I was only, I think I wasn't even 3 centimeters dilated. And usually that's kind of like, go home, you know, first baby, this could be hours. And I was like, "I'm not going anywhere." So they gave me a sleeping tablet and some Panadol, and I laid in a recliner and tried to go to sleep. And 45 minutes later, I pushed my son out.
Wow.
And yeah, so I birthed him on the birth center floor, but he was actually born with gastroschisis. So his, a lot of his organs on the outside of his body, and it was undiagnosed. So he was born with his bowel and small and large intestines and stomach on the outside of his body. And his grandmother caught him, but so even though, you know, within seconds the emergency buzzers hit, and I don't know what's going on because I knew that I was in the running start position, and I'm like, "Why aren't you passing me my baby?" She's like, "I can't." She's like, "Have a quick look between your legs." So I've looked at him and he was covered, and she's like, "I'm going to have to cut the cord." And I was like, "Absolutely not. I want delayed cord clamping." She's like, "You can't have it, Tessie, I'm sorry." So emergency buzzer hit. A million people bust into the room. There's lights on all of a sudden, and she's like, "You know, hop up now. This is the only chance you're going to get to see him." So she's put a blanket on me. I've hopped up. I've got an umbilical cord flicking blood across the floor. I've looked at him, and that's when I've seen, you know, his organs on the outside of his body. And it was hectic. But coming back to safety, I would not prefer anything else, because if I had known that I was expecting an unwell baby, I would have been stressed the whole pregnancy. They might want to have induced me or given me a cesarean or monitored me, you know. And I'm so glad that I got to have a labor and a birth in a dark, calm room, you know, the way I wanted to. Everything, you know, went really well.
Wow.
So, as well as it could have.
Tess,
But
what gave you that strength in regards to when somebody says you're going to have to do this and you said no? What gave you, how did you have the strength to say no?
It was my baby.
Right.
I'll kill people. Can I say
knowing that, women are protective. However, there's also the trust sometimes in, you know, maybe it's, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but there's maybe a lot more trust is put into baby safer with, you know, with the doctor right now.
Yeah, and that was my next phase. He was rushed to intensive care to wait for the on-call doctor. And for about 12 hours there, I was like, I need to trust that this baby is going to be okay, and I'm going to trust these people to be in control, because there's not a lot that I can do here, you know. So yeah, I just had to trust that they knew how they were gonna act and how they were gonna deal. So for instance, usually a baby with that condition has their organs put into, like, I think the word's a sieve, and they wait for baby to grow bigger, because obviously their organs being on the outside of their body, their cavity is not growing to size to fit them in. So usually they just let it slowly feed back in through a tube. Whereas Riley, with this doctor, he was confident enough to just push it all back through the little hole beside his umbilical cord, and then allow it to just heal naturally with the gauze over the top. So, you know, there's things like that. So I still declined formula feeding, and I I never wanted to use a dummy. So when they called me in the birth room and I was sleeping, they were like, can we give him a dummy? He's getting quite upset. And I was like, yes, because he's, by now he should have been on my breast, and that would have been not only nourishing him, but also comforting him. And so the stress of crying. So there's sometimes you definitely need medical help sometimes. So it definitely has a place. And I'm super, super grateful for it. But it doesn't always have to be you deciding everything or them deciding everything. You can work together to work out an individual plan.
Yeah, wow. I'm fascinated by this story. Can I keep asking more questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Curious. If it's okay to share, because I can only imagine there's probably women, mothers that maybe have had that similar experience. And when I say the similar experience, I mean that time, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like when baby's gone off and you're there waiting to hear what's going to happen. How did you remain strong through that?
So when he was taken, his dad said to me, do you want me to stay or go? And I was like, go with him. And then, no one's left in the room except for me and a midwife. I got into the cold birth pool to wash off, and then I got in the shower, and that's when the shock hit me. And I just remember, I don't think I could ever recreate the shaking that my body was doing. I was ice cold in this hot shower, and I was just uncontrollable shaking. But, the whole way through, it was just you don't really have the option to fall apart, because who's there for this baby if you do, which I'm sure there would have been people, I'm sure his grandmothers, our loved ones would be there for him, but just that protective instinct was always you've got to be there for this child. So I don't know if I cried, I'm sure I cried, but I also know that after my shower, the midwife helped me get dressed, and I went and saw him. And then it was kind of just there's nothing we can do right now. We're just waiting. And then, so I went back to the room and I slept. I was just so exhausted, 3 days of pre-labor and then all of that. So I slept, I think, for 12 hours. 12 hours? No, it wouldn't have been that much. Yeah, but yeah. So, and then eventually went and saw him again, and he was in intensive care then. But I don't know, I just always believed, I really believe in mindset, and I just believe, no, he's going to be okay. He is going to be okay. It's not an option for him not to be okay. So, and I was really adamant at that point, because I wanted to do, I wanted him to be on my skin straight away, and I wanted to breastfeed straight away. And I just knew the importance of that bonding. I was really worried that we would miss that. I was really worried that I wouldn't suddenly want this. I wouldn't want him all of a sudden, because I was lacking that bonding. But I started my expressing breast milk pretty much straight away. And that was, just had to maintain that for my sanity, and just to know that he was going to receive that, and we were going to have that bond, even if it was in a different way. But and I also just felt again, with that intuition, I was there at the hospital so often. I had the option of staying, but I cannot stay in hospital. It's just too much for me. It's like a jail cell. There's no fresh air, there's no windows. So I went home, but I tried to be there I was there almost every single day. I think it was one day I wasn't, because there was a massive storm and we just couldn't, the road was too dangerous. But I just felt the power of just being there with him, but touching him as well. It was all an energetic exchange to me at that point, And I couldn't hold him for over a week. I couldn't hold him until I was rushed back to hospital 10 days postpartum with a postpartum hemorrhage. And I think by that point he was in special care. So by that point, at that point as well, I was very lucky to have strong women around me. His grandmother being a midwife, she was don't let them bully you. You're a young mum, you might be discriminated against. You're Indigenous, you might be discriminated against. I remember I'm super bogan, like super bogan. Like my clothes have holes in them. Like that's comfort and love.
I must interrupt for 1 second, just in case there's an international viewer. Tessa,
Oh yeah, bogan.
played bogan. Means
Well,
down, right? Down to earth.
My clothes are daggy. They're not fancy clothes, you know. So I remember his grandmother went and bought me clothes and was like, please wear this to the hospital just to take some heat off you, you know. But I think in the end, I think I blew them away, you know, because I was like, I think a lot of people at that age are really lost. I mean, we're always, at any age, we're pretty lost. But he was my focus. So I was like, I don't want to be anywhere else. Like nothing, you know, I've tested the waters with drugs and alcohol and partying and everything that you can do already. I'm like, this is the one that feels like right for me. Like, this is where I want my focus to be. This is where I want to get this right, you know? So,
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for opening up to that. That's amazing. You're taking me there in everything you shared as well. So, you know, and especially as a guy, sometimes it's very difficult to even, and I'll be honest in saying, to empathize with what that must be like. But I could only imagine not knowing, like that fear of not knowing and wondering, you know, what got you through that. So you answered that incredibly. So that's awesome. Hey Tessa, let's talk about birth now. You know this. We look at Riley's now 9.
Yeah.
9 years old, right? So this journey's led you on a self-discovery where, you know, I guess the intuition's much stronger now. It's led you in many places. What do you want for birth? And what do you want for women? Might be two separate questions, but I'm just curious. What do you want for birth and what do you want for women?
I guess what I want for women is I want them to know that they have options, and I want them to know what those options are. And I also think I want for women, for us to gather in circles again and pass down ancient knowledge, which is our birthright to know. You know, trust in all situations, trust in your ability. Be able to just know that you're allowed to not hold it together all the time, and that you're allowed to ask for help and you don't have to do things on your own. And I also want us as a society, like you mentioned death doulas before, I want us as a society to accept death as a normal, healthy, non-scary part of life. I feel like there's a lot of control because there's a lot of fear because no one talks about death. I was talking to a midwife friend about this yesterday. We were discussing recently a baby passed away, and they were sharing the details of how and why. And, you know, at the end of our conversation, because, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? But that's not how life works. So at the end of our conversation, we were both just like, you know, she got to make the calls, you know, and she is the one that's going to have to deal with the outcome. And that's just how it should be. Sometimes the outcome is death. Sometimes I definitely think we can dictate our journey to a point, but I also think that some of it is predetermined. You know, sometimes people aren't meant to live. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. That's super insightful. I love asking you questions. It's so cool. So when we look at, let's say, for example, I ask all the guests this same question. Let's say you have a magic wand and you can do whatever you want in the world right now that's going to make things to be more aligned. I don't say better because I don't believe there's good, bad, right, wrong. There just is, right? However, if it is, and you have a magic wand to create something in the world of birth, what would it do? What would you change, if anything?
I think it would come back to intuition. Just give everyone full faith in intuition and trust in life, I guess, and death and birth. which is all those things. All those things are all those things.
So here's a question then. How does someone trust that more? You know, if you're going to wave that wand and empower people now, you know, let's say women specifically who maybe, and I agree when we talk about the element of fear, from what I understand of birth, the little that I understand, fear is something that plays a pivotal role in turning things either for or against you. So if we look at intuition being that trust, how does someone nurture that? What do they have to do? What have you done in the last 9 years since Riley come along?
I think reading, if you don't have a physical support system where you can learn from women from all different walks of life who have faced that inner crap, and who own it, who aren't afraid to say, this is what happened, this was the outcome, and that's okay. I've dealt with that, maybe, yeah. So so reading really guided me, and then I was lucky to have that in-person support system where I learned more about, my body, my hormones, my rights, discrimination, how to navigate the system. I think, and one really powerful element of that is that every week they had a mum come in and tell their birth story, so it was always something different, and that really just solidified for me that every single birth is different, and what's traumatic for someone is not going to be traumatic for another person, and we're going to have different triggers and different inner work to do, and that's okay. So reading, that support system, and just listening to different people's stories. I think that covers it.
Sort of like this, right? I love the thought of stories, and hearing this is the first time I've heard about Riley's birth story. So it's so insightful. You mentioned something before, Tessa, about coming together in a circle. Tell me more about that.
It is like, especially for me, I'm a product of the stolen generation, from generations gone past. We're affected by it, so we don't know where we come from. So I'm an Aboriginal woman. We don't know our tribe, which is like a very sore part in my family. But what I do know is that, like all of the tribes in Australia and many other places around the world, have always used a circle to come together and learn together and share, it's vital. Like, everyone's equal in a circle. Like, it's super powerful what you can bring about in that circle, what you can release, what you can learn, what you can integrate.
Wow.
So
as a doula then, let's look forward and say, you said this is where you want to put a lot more energy into when it comes to doulaing as well. What do you envision for life as a doula for you now?
Oh my goodness. I think you mentioned before we started this how many things you want to do. That's what I'm like. So I might not get to doulaing. I mean, like, I'm wanting to do it now, but it might be 50 years when I actually get there, and it might look different. It might be death doulaing. But I'm not sure. With my placenta business, I was really comfortable with being out of the spotlight and not being in person. It was something done, I was in the birth world, but not directly. And I really liked that for that part of my life. But now I'm like, you know what? I'm really craving being in person and having that connection. And because I just know, I feel how powerful that is. So I don't know if doulaing will look like childbirth education, or if it'll be play groups for mums during pregnancy, or afterwards, or being there. I don't know, but I would really like to work with other Indigenous women, other women that have had a wild ride and need that extra little bit of love and support, and who's okay with lots of swearing. No.
The prerequisite.
I feel like it'd be easier if I just wrote that rather than just tried to hide it.
Must be okay with the F word that's in the
Yeah.
contract. Tessa, you bring something up, and I just had this vision of it. Now, it wasn't a place that I was fortunate enough to see, but we went to Cairns with all of the Hypnobirthing Australia.
Yeah.
Amazing women that and all the incredible work they do. And one of the visits that they did was to the traditional Aboriginal birthing pools. I think I was talking about that. And like, as you're talking about it, now I never got to see it, obviously, but I saw women come back and could not explain in words what which was so cool. And, you know, there's a part of me too, when I look at all elements of everything, is that we've lost a lot of things. Although we've gained a lot, technology and things, we've also lost a lot of things passed down. If there's one gift, if you look at from generations that have been specific to birth, if there's one gift that they had that you wish could be passed and echoed on to today that we've forgotten or lost, what is that? That women,
from an Indigenous perspective, is that what you mean?
It can be, or it can be wisdom, or, you know, it can be, I mean, I think there's a lot. If we talk about Australia, obviously, you know, we have a lot of culture, and I agree that it's been forgotten and lost. And I guess I bring it to birth specifically. So if we look at that, then I think it resonates with you when it comes to Indigenous wisdom. What could be passed on that we've forgotten?
I feel like I keep saying the same words, but just trust, I guess, you know, just, and women actually, women being there for women, you know, like I've done a couple of videos today about yearning, steaming and stuff. And the thing that keeps coming up is that, you know, gynecology and obstetrics is this male dominated thing that colonizers brought in and thought, I am the knowledgeable one, you must listen to me. And it's like, well, midwives, women being with women and women supporting women has been the way of forever until the introduction of obstetrics. And I feel like that's got a lot to answer for. So
you brought up something, and I can be very neutral when I ask this question. Please don't shoot the messenger. It's just a question because I'm curious. Why aren't women there for women? Why is it sometimes, you know, let me be observant. I think, let's face it, blokes, we do a lot of things wrong, right? Yet we can have an argument, and the next day we understand each other, we have a beer and it's all over, right? Or we do whatever, and it's like, okay, look, I understand where you're coming from. And I think my observations in the birthing world specifically is there is a lot of that bitchiness, right?
Well, yeah, I feel like another way to disempower humanity is to put them against one another. And when you look at, you know, I held a women's circle right here the other night with a bunch of beautiful women, and it comes up so often, I hear it so often, is that, you know, I didn't know that I could have this kind of relationship with other women. You know, we've all been guided to compete with one another, you know, and it's ridiculous. And it's kind of obvious as to why, or it became obvious to me a couple of years ago. And it's one reason why I don't have time for mainstream TV or reality TV anymore, and listening to the radio. And it's because every show, or particularly TV shows, you know, they're always so full of drama. It's like nothing's happening in life unless you're in somebody else's business and you're creating drama. And I feel like we take that on, and we're like, yeah, we see it everywhere. So we think, oh, we're supposed to be bitchy, and we're supposed to compete, and we're supposed to be catty, and we're supposed to put one another down, and we can't be wonderful and whole and great and share from our hearts if somebody else is doing the same. And it's just ridiculous. Like, why can't we all do it? Like, we all bring something different to the table, you know? Like, it might be similar, but it's still going to be different. You have a different spin to whatever it is you're bringing, and somebody out there needs to hear it. Like, I just think that if we didn't have a purpose being on this planet, we wouldn't be here. So, and I also think that's been one of my biggest guides is, well, why are you here if nothing matters? So, you know, I think I got sick of saying I don't care as a child in primary school, and the teacher was like, yes you do, and I was like, no you don't. But actually it's like, yeah, I do freaking care. I do care. Like I think we have so much potential, and we can, I mean, if we can make the world shit, we can make it good, right? Like it goes both ways.
I love that. How do we shift it, Tessa, with your wisdom? How do we shift that competitiveness? And let's talk birth specifically. That's what I'm really more about. No, okay. I'm just curious about birth specifically, because that's where I think you have a lot of innate wisdom. How do we look at, you know, I guess, and let's face it, it is, you know, when it comes to giving birth, it is women. It is. So how do we bring that together? We talk about a circle. How do we bring a global circle specifically with women in birth?
I feel like all we can really do is just keep sharing about it. You know, I feel like it causes a ripple effect. I feel like if you're putting that out there into the universe, it's going out there. You know, if you're, you know, if you yourself want to hold a circle, hold it. Like I feel like so often we hold ourselves back because we're like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I might do something wrong. Of course you're going to do lots of things wrong. You're going to make mistakes, but how else are you going to learn, and how else are you going to get there? You know, we just need to start somewhere. You know, people so often are like, oh, I can't believe you've done this, or I can't believe you've done that. And I'm like, I'm just like you. You could start, you could host a retreat as well. You know, you could organize a circle. Like I still mess up all the time, and I will until I die. And it doesn't matter because my intention is pure, and I want to bring us together and create change. So I remember I just held my first retreat at the start of the year, and one of my friends messaged me and she's like, I keep seeing this and I really want to come, but I'm really nervous. And I was like, bruh, I'm really nervous too. And I'm hosting it. Like if I could not go, I wouldn't too. Like, but you know, I just knew that I want to do it. I want to prove myself that I can do it, and I want to hold this space for women. And I mean, you can't really mess it up that bad.
Wow. I love what you're sharing. I remember seeing you promoting that as well. What come of that? I'm curious I don't need to know the details. It's very private and a very secure space that you had.
What came of that, or what will come of that?
Look at the other side of the women that left that circle. Let's call it the circle. What do you believe in your heart? You talk about intention. I love that. Your intention's pure in creating that environment for them. What came of that on the other side for the women that experienced it?
There was a lot of breakdowns. A lot of people got home and had emotional breakdowns, and I was one of them. And I think that's because we talked about it, because a lot of the girls from this retreat came to the circle the other night, and we talked about it there briefly. And I mentioned the reason I think we have the emotional breakdown is because we realize we're returning to a society that's not set up for us to thrive. And it's like, and also the realization that, hey, I didn't have to be alone in all these things, and I haven't been alone, but I didn't know that. I didn't realize. I thought I was crazy, and I thought if I spoke about that, and it's so often they're always just like, I feel the same. I didn't know other people felt the same. And yeah, so just that community feeling of you're not alone, and it's okay to mess up and be human. There was, I also realized that retreats and circles don't have to be this fancy thing. You know, so often we see this beautiful setup, but you don't need the crystals and the cards and the prompts and the candles and everything. Yeah, they add a beautiful touch, and if you're privileged enough to do that, sure. But the power is not from that crap. The power is not from the flowy, beautiful $100 dress that you're wearing. The power is from what you're willing to share, and the fact that you're willing to show up and listen to somebody else as well. So, yeah.
Wow. You're doing amazing things, Tessa. You really are. I have a final question. It's in two parts. You want to share a message to maybe pregnant women right now, and you want to share a message to other birth workers in the world right now, birth professionals in whatever form. What would be the message you'd want to give to both?
Oh my goodness, that's huge. I feel like the message I want to give to mums, I didn't delve deeply enough into, because it's about taking responsibility for your birth and for your education and for your decisions. And I feel like it's always better to, well, it's always better to take that responsibility leading up to conceiving or whilst you're pregnant. Yeah, rather than doing it after, which usually in a lot of cases we look back after a traumatic birth and that's our wake up call. That's another thing I hear frequently. It was like, I just trusted the experts and this is what I ended up with. And actually, I'll just come back to my midwife friend that I was speaking to yesterday. What she says to me all the time is she will ask a woman, you know, what is it that you want? Do you want this or that? And the woman will say, well, you're the expert, so you decide. And she legally can't really go deep into how she's not the expert of somebody else's life. But she's like, I wish these people would trust their instincts. Like, they're the ones that are going to have to live with these decisions. It's not me. It's not a one size fits all scenario. So yeah, I guess with trusting your instincts comes responsibility for what you decide, and acceptance as to what comes from that, because we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't see what's going to happen. So I guess my message to expecting parents is research and feel comfortable, and, you know, research the possible negatives or what you class as a negative. You know, research what's going to happen if an emergency cesarean is on the table, so that you're, you know, prepared for each thing. You know, I feel like birth and parenting is one of the biggest transitions we face in life, and the one that we prepare for the least. Like, it's just crazy. So yeah, and for other birth workers, just, I don't know, I don't know. I feel like I understand why people compete, and that's because there's fear and there's this expectation to earn a certain amount of money. But I guess just lead with your heart rather than ego, and don't be afraid to say sorry, or I was wrong, or I don't know. Yeah, you don't, like, none of us are getting out alive. So we might as well, you know, support each other and build something beautiful while we can. Like, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I could speak to you all day, Tessa. Literally, your stories, everything. You take me to other places. It's very cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. I can't wait to listen back to this. Please also share, how do people get in touch with you?
So I'm on Instagram as Yoni Herbs Australia, and also as Menstrual Moon Magic. And I've also got a website where you can just purchase Yoni Herbs, and that's yoniherbs.bigcartel.com. And I also do consults there. So
wonderful. Yoni is YONI, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Tessa, this has been absolutely amazing. I know there's wisdom in that. What I always love, and I have no idea why we even set this up, to have these conversations. It's that intuitive thought of, it feels right. I wonder what we'll discover, right? And you know, I don't know who's listening to this that resonates with what you have to share, but I know there's people out there, and I know there's women out there that will really resonate with what you have to share. So thank you. Really, really.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Tessa.
Bye.